back with you once again on this edition of the India Development Debate. India for Indians policy is playing out in the e-commerce space as well. A government think tank headed by Commerce Minister Suresh Prabhu has drawn up the broad contours of a new e-commerce policy, which is expected to provide a level playing field to the Desi and the MNC e-tailers. The biggest takeaway is the curbs on e-com players from influencing prices. The new law may also place restrictions on bulk purchase of a host of products, including white goods, while there could be a sunset clause when it comes to deep discounts. The biggest hurdle for MNCs like Amazon and Flipkart and Walmart could come in the way of inventory curbs, although made in India goods may be kept out of the ambit. Quite obviously, the Desi Brigade is celebrating, while global players see this as a protectionist move. The big e-com policy and the push by the Modi government is a big topic of discussion on the second edition of the India Development Debate. I'm Supriya Srinath, and joining us is a special panel right here. I've got Ashwani Mahajan, National Co-Convener, the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, Viren Shah, President, Federation of Retail Traders Welfare Association, Harish Chawla, Partner, True North, an active angel investor, and of course Mukesh Aghi, President and CEO, US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Thanks each one of you for being with us. And Harish, if I may actually start with you, the draft policy on e-commerce talks about everything from pricing to FDI to consumer protection to data localization. It pretty much covers just about everything that they can be covered. Is the scope of the policy in that sense way too broad, trying to do way too much all at the same time? And can this be realistically implemented?
Yeah, actually, I think before the policy actually gets played out, it will go through several rounds of rework. I mean, clearly, it's just very broad and very deep at this moment. So I think the biggest challenge is that you can say these words in a policy, but how will you actually go around policing these things? And whether it is right for the government to do this level of policing, as the policy suggests, in a segment which is really open to the whole market. So I think that's the key challenge with this policy. I think the fact that we are going to get one regulator, the fact that there is now going to be a clear policy, and essentially also remember that these policies do evolve, as we've seen in other industries like insurance or like many other industries, like aviation, for example. The fact that this is all coming together under one comprehensive framework is a fantastic news. It will just clear the paths for many structures and substructures that companies have been making, and clear the path for investments with clarity. But my sense is that it is currently too broad and too deep both, and therefore that will have to go through multiple iterations with both players who've committed billions of dollars into India. I don't think India can turn their back on this kind of investments have been made, given the kind of economy we are and the kind of fair trade practices we follow. We are quite unlike China in those respects. So my sense is a lot of this will take place over the next few weeks, and what may come out at the end of it will be a fairly sensible framework that works for everybody.
Mukesh Aghi, how confident are you that we will perhaps see better sense prevail, and this is perhaps just one of the first such drafts? We will see the policy evolve. There will be less policing, at least not the kinds that the present draft talks about, because, big players have committed big bucks. Could we actually see some of that money being reviewed? I mean, we are actually also hearing folks like Amazon and Walmart talk about reviewing their investments here. Mukesh Aghi.
Well, one thing is I like to compliment the government that they have put a draft policy out there, and it is going through a consultative process. And our reaction is government business is not to be in business and micromanaging the business itself. And I think as we go through the process itself, I think sanity will prevail, and you'll hopefully see a better policy document coming out. And I think that's important, because if you stay with the current document, it'll make our job very difficult, which we encourage US companies to invest in India. And I think so as we move on, hopefully a better draft policy, a better consultative process will bring more sanity to the process here.
Okay, hold that thought, because I'm going to take this across to Viren Shah. And Viren, the draft talks about a sunset clause for deep discounts apart from limits on how group companies can influence prices. Why on earth is the government getting into pricing decisions here? Isn't this against the very principle of what a free market should be? Viren Shah.
See, I think the government is what they are trying is to ensure that there is a level playing field. There should not be cutthroat competition. There should not be any job loss to the Indian economy. There should not be any kind of a where the government has introduced Make in India concept and they are working on it. And at the end of the day, what I hear is that government is now looking at some kind of a tax out of them, but since they are showing 11,754 crores amongst Flipkart, Snapdeal and Amazon, and government is now seeing that this is only to do a brand valuation and the brand building exercise, whereas Indian government is not getting any tax revenue. And this is the main idea behind the government, is that why should these companies keep showing the losses, and all the losses have been given in the terms of the pricing, and that's where the cutthroat competition comes, where the smaller traders, they can't bring so much of money into their business, but the big players can bring a lot of market capital and investments, money from abroad. A lot of investors are queuing up to them. It's basically it's a brand building exercise which is there, and at the end of the day the government is losing because there is no tax coming. Traders are losing because the business is being wiped out in the name of the pricing, because the cutthroat competition is there. So I guess it's a level playing field is the main reason to that government is bringing this kind of regulation in the draft policy.
Viren, just hold that thought right now, because I want to get in Ashwini Mahajan, who represents the Swadeshi Jagran Manch. And I keep hearing this argument time and again that they get money from overseas and there's predatory pricing, they're just building their brand on this. Mr. Mahajan, why is it that predatory pricing and market distortions are only talked about and are only applicable to foreign funded capital? What about the telecom sector, where an Indian Jio drove prices so low that it led to losses for the players? Is that okay? I mean, we've seen the kind of mergers that we've seen in telecom thanks to this predatory pricing. So is predatory pricing fine when done by an Indian operator or an Indian company, but not fine when it's foreign funded? Is that the logic here? Ashwini ji?
Let me tell you, Swadeshi Jagamanch is equally opposed to such kind of predatory pricing even by the domestic players, because Swadeshi does not mean only the foreigners are doing wrong, then only we will oppose. We had been opposing the organized retailing even by the Reliance earlier. So it is nothing like that. Number two, as you had said, that free market should be allowed to operate. This is no argument, because free market does not mean that you come with deep pockets and kill others. So this is not free market, this is killing. So therefore free market has to be there by level playing field. This is exactly what this policy is aimed at, by domestic data protection and by localization of data, by way of providing all this data to all the stakeholders, and therefore providing a level playing field. So this is a wonderful policy as far as the data localization is concerned.
Okay, Ashwini Mahajan.
And in this case, Let
me just come in. Let me just come in, because data is a point that I am going to discuss separately. Just allow me to ask you another question here, because then I will take this on to another topic. I keep hearing this Desi versus Swadeshi. What is India according to you? What is Indian according to you? The capital coming from foreign players is ultimately funding discounts for consumers like you and me who are Indians. It's creating jobs in India. It's bringing more Indian sellers online. What difference does the source of the capital make as long as the beneficiaries are Indians?
Supriya, this is such an argument which nobody would take, because if they are coming with the deep pockets, coming with in the name of foreign investment, and then having a cash burning model, keep on burning cash, 10 years you don't earn any profit, and you keep on burning cash, and you say in the name of the consumers. What consumers are going to gain out of it if they ultimately capture the market and then trying to exploit them? So this is no way. You have to have a fair business. This is no fair, because for 10 years, 11 years, you are not earning any profits, and still you are saying that your valuation is going on. So this valuation increase is not required, and in fact, we have been asking for this e-commerce policy, and this e-commerce policy has come now. You see, there was no e-commerce policy. We were going to WTO and asking for it, and others were saying that okay, you enter with the agreement. How can we enter with international agreements if you don't have any policy of your own? So this is the policy, and this protects the small. This is providing equal competition.
Ashwini Mahajan, let me just get on to the very specifics of the policy. I don't know what your opposition is. Your opposition to foreign capital is your opposition to cash being burnt for valuations. I haven't been able to put my finger on that, but let me go across to Harish. And Harish, one of the key recommendations in the draft are violations in Press Note 3 rules. While this says that an e-commerce firm with a marketplace cannot own inventory and that not more than 25% of sales can come from a single vendor, convoluted company structures have helped players get around this rule. I mean, this is very well known. The draft says a separate wing of the ED will now look into this. Is this enough to ensure that we have a level playing field?
See, I think one of the challenges is that we are bringing in the policy after a lot of the investments have happened, after a lot of the structures have been put in place. So, my sense is that how much can you ask players who've invested money to roll back on some of these issues? And there's never a perfect answer. I think the very simple situation is you cannot tell a company not to discount if it wants to win market share. Equally, and the other argument exists that there is enough capital arbitrage going on that no Indian player can stand up to the wall of capital that's available to the foreign companies. So, in my view, I think the previous idea that not more than 25% of your goods can be deeply discounted by a related party. Some of these are the kind of structure that have to come rather than get into the pricing itself or the discount itself or putting a timeline on the discount. For example, all retail stores are at discount today. If you go into the market, you will find 50% off offline stores. So how will you come up with a restriction on online? So some of these provisions will have to be seen in the context of what's already happened. I mean, this policy, had it been written 10 years ago, would have meant something very different than what it means today. So my sense is that through the consultation, I think the government will have to take into account what the existing realities are and how to put a sensible framework that, neither are players, punished after having taken steps to invest in India, nor are they allowed freely to distort the market, but equally keep the government out. So my sense is it's a kind of process of negotiating down and trying to come up with broad guidelines versus trying to say that what can be the period for a discount or doing anything like that. I don't think that's feasible, nor is it practicable, nor is it good. I mean, there are several advantages to having a good and deep e-commerce investment in India. Look at what it's done to the whole logistics business.
Absolutely.
Look at what it's going to do on supply chain front.
Sure. Viren Shah, I want you to react to the point that Harish Chavla made, that it's perhaps a little too late because companies have sunk in big money here, these models have been put in place, structures have been put in place, significant capital has been pumped in. Going by the draft, Flipkart too will qualify for a foreign-owned company because an inventory-based model is only allowed in cases where foreign equity doesn't exceed 49%. So what happens? I mean, we can't make changes retrospectively now. Either this should have come in place earlier, or do you expect negotiations to happen for this to be more prudent?
See, the points have been raised for quite some time. It is not that these are the points which have been raised now. It has been raised since years and years. In fact, everybody knows that even in America or any parts of the world, people are aware of these kind of cutthroat competition where these people come in a big pocket and they try to shut down all the mom and pop stores, kirana. It has been going on since last, I think, more than 15-20 years, this kind of a debate. and government is aware of it. I agree with you that they should have been doing this before the people bring in their money and before the infrastructures comes in. This should have been done in advance. This cannot be done. Everything in India happens afterwards. I mean, it doesn't happen in advance. Suppose the bridge falls, then they start repairing. So this is the problem in India, is always remain. They do it after the things happens and not before. And they should have done it this before, not after.
So at least you're conceding that damage will be done if they try to implement it as is. But let me take this across to Mukesh again. Mukesh, one other aspect about promoter control is the move to bring in differential voting rights where the promoter has a minority stake. While this is positive for founders, is there a concern that this could scare away investors in a maturing and nascent market like ours here?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons when you look at a big investment by Amazon and the Walmarts is that it is a true open market, and we claim that, and we keep on encouraging investment. And the moment you start micromanaging how to run a business, how to run the voting rights, how to discount, it will scare investors out of India itself, because I think they all go to their boards and they have commitments on the revenue side. And so I would say that it was a very wrong signal to the investment community. I just want to come back to the earlier argument that these folks are discounting it with deep pockets. So what? At the end of the day, it's the Indian consumer which is benefiting. And if they want to discount Indian consumer, let them keep on discounting it. It's just good for everybody. But more important is they're bringing what I call is the coal supply chain. They're helping farmers in a structured way to buy their products. They're moving, almost 30% of the waste, farm products are wasted. I think with their supply chain, you'll see much more improvement in that area. So it's not just about discounting. It's not about pricing. It's all about also about methodology. It's about trying to bring in great jobs itself. So I think there are multiple factors which play in from these companies.
Okay, I'm going to come in there because I've just got the last 6 odd minutes left on the show and plenty of ground to cover. So I request each one of you to make it brief. Mr. Mahajan, you spoke about data localization, where data generated in India is subject to controls. This will have an overlap with the Sri Krishna committee report that also talks about localizing data. Is there confusion because of rules coming from too many agencies suddenly on data? First there was no control on data, suddenly now everybody wants data localization. Isn't there going to be a clash between what they say, what this report says?
I don't know, you should be questioning, why are you questioning the data localization issue? The committee has already been formed, and this draft policy also talks about that committee, and it says finally whatever the committee says, the action will be taken. But there is no reason to create any fuss for the data localization, because it is going to provide, number one, the level playing field to the domestic players, to the small players, and it is not going to harm anybody. So there is nothing wrong in data localization. If the people are mining data, if they are collecting data, they are taking the data with them, and this whole game of so-called foreign investment is for data only. They are what they have, they don't have anything, they have only data. Let me tell you, if this foreign funding stops, these companies will be bankrupt, I tell you. So they are simply burning cash and getting money from abroad. If you stop that channel, these companies don't have anything. What to talk of you have a big supply chain. What supply chain? They are not even allowed to keep. They are not allowed to keep inventories.
So you basically saying they are here for the data deluge, and if the data is not there, they will run away. I get your point there. But Harish Chawla, is the move to have a single regulator positive? Because it could reduce ambiguity and overlaps. And does it also mean too much control rests with a single entity though?
No, I think, it's time that we have a regulator for these things. These are extremely complex issues in a country like India, where you have to, you have the Kirana business and modern trade and e-commerce all actually growing at the same time. I don't see Kirana stores are also modernizing themselves. So things are happening. So having a single regulator is absolutely fine. I think the stance of the regulator and how they look at the context and how they look at development, and I think how they direct investments in the sector. So should they direct investments towards asking players to build up supply chains, to build up warehousing capabilities to help the small suppliers, or should the investments go directed only toward discount? So I think if you calibrate the entire control over the industry, remember regulation will necessarily bring in a set of rules for everybody to play with. How strict the rules are and how feasible they are, because otherwise you will find a situation where everybody will find loopholes. So if you don't allow me to give a direct discount, I'll give a discount via service, I'll give it via AMC. There are 100 ways for a private business
the government needs to keep out of policing pricing there. Okay, I get that point, but very quickly, Mukesh Aghi, what sort of repercussions will this have on the Indo-US trade relations? There is already buzz that Walmart and Amazon have decided to take it up with their governments back home.
Well, I think it's a draft policy, so I think it'll go through a much more consultative process. So the impact, I don't think it's much of an impact until it becomes a final policy. But I think it's important to understand, especially I just want to comment on data localization regulator. I think it's good to have a regulator, we support it, but data localization should not be isolated from global data itself, because what happens is you are part of the global supply chain, and it's important to make sure that while you're respecting local laws, you don't get isolated from the global supply chain also.
Hold that thought, because I'm going to take a quick question to Swadeshi Jagran Manch and then to Viren Shah. And Mr. Mahajan, is this policy or the draft that's out a sign of India trying to be China in terms of putting the country first? It's worked for China quite clearly, but is it too late for India to now turn the wheel back all over again?
It's better late than never. So I think now the government has risen to the occasion, and whatever wrongs have been done, and we have seen in the last few years how the laws were circumvented by these e-commerce players, and cases are on there in enforcement directorate, in RBI, elsewhere. So now at least the policy is in place, and there will be a curb on the circumvention of law. After all, you have to maintain the law, you have to keep the law of the land at supreme. You see, you can't allow these people to circumvent the law. You have been circumventing Press Note 3 about the
Right.
discounting, about inventory, and about everything. So now
No, I
this,
think you're-
this law is in place, this policy is in place, and laws would be made accordingly.
Right. I think your answer summed it up in that one line that you said, it's better late than never, and that's been your position for a while. Viren Shah, a last word to you. One can argue that e-commerce is still very, very small, less than 3% of retail by some estimates. Will this policy really help in bringing more clarity to a fast growing space? You started off your opening remarks were, you can't turn the wheel back. It's, things have happened. We are moving too late. Do you believe this finally brings clarity?
Well, it's if you compare with offline and online, the online business is rapidly increasing. It's just a beginning, and there are many more players are coming into the market. It's going to be actually a very, very challenging for the small traders. It will be challenging for all the malls, especially malls. It will be a big challenge for them. I mean, it will be a challenge for the smaller also, but there will be a challenges for the big players who are running offline stores in the mall. So I guess it's going to be a survival of the fittest. And while doing this, while we are selecting survival of the fittest, government is trying to put a brake over there. They're trying to regulate, which is not a bad sign. As long as consumer is always a king. So at the end of the day, consumer should decide what to buy, how to buy, and at what rate. But at the same time, government should ensure those people who are coming into our country, they should not pay our taxes, and they should take that brand back and they make 100 times their brand value.
Okay.
So they make money out of them. The
Viren-
Indian government does not
Viren
make
Shah,
money
thank
out
you
of
very much for those closing remarks, because I really think you've given me a last cue to wrap up this show. I can't thank this wonderful panel enough. Haresh Chawla, Mukesh Aghi, Viren Shah, and of course Ashwini Mahajan for joining us. This is going to be a never-ending debate. This is one such first draft that we are seeing. Given how nationalist our policies have suddenly become, we will perhaps see a lot more influence of the Desi lobby onto this. But will the Walmarts and Amazons that have sunk in the big dollars here stay quiet is really the big billion-dollar question, is it not? Thanks very much for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. Up next is Top 10 at 10.